Good morning, and welcome to a bumpy back road. I've not tried taking the back trail to town at all this year, so we're just going to make ourselves late for work because it don't matter, because yesterday or this weekend was graduation, so the only people running around between the two buildings fighting over the parking lot space are those of us who have to work. And that's not necessarily all of us, because a lot of us are teaching faculty, so I have to be at work. It's important that I go to work because I have all my letters to freaking work on. But anyway, that's not the subject of this video. The subject of this video, before I forget entirely, whoops, hopefully I don't end up down the side of this. And as you can see, this thing doesn't necessarily like to stay horizontal when I hit things. Anyway, so life lessons I've learned from jail, because my husband for a while was making fun of me for watching the TV show Jail. And if you've never watched the TV show Jail, I highly recommend watching it, especially if you're going to and haven't before. Start with Vegas Jail. Vegas Jail gives you the best freaking life lessons compared to the other ones. Texas Jail's not bad either, but Vegas Jail's where you see all the things. All the things. So first thing I've learned, which is probably the most important thing if you switch the video off now, is that the detention officers, not to be confused with correction officers in actual big jails, the detention officers don't care why you're there. And being a fuss budget and yelling about things and saying that you were like wrongly picked up or whatever, that's great and all, except they're not the arresting officer. They're literally just trying to flip you like a waitress flips tables. They're trying to get you through this like booking and receiving process and, you know, get you a court date and whatever and get you back out. That's all they're trying to do. So if you fuss with them and you act a fool with them, you're not helping anybody at all. In fact, you're probably slowing down your ability to get the heck out. Because at least in Vegas Jail, they're like minimum turnaround time's kind of like a pregnant woman giving birth. It's about 4 hours. So if you want to be out sooner rather than later, what you do is you act nice and you stay quiet and you go, yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am, and you don't put up a gigantic fuss. Because none of the fuss you're putting up is going to have anything to do with your case. So just chill. I've never been picked up, but I figure that was like the best advice I ever got out of watching that. A lot of the other advice I have for people sort of stems off that. So the first one is like, don't come in hot. And granted, if you're drunk, you can't always control yourself. So a lot of times when getting brought in drunk or high, they're violent. But yeah, don't come in violent, yelling, screaming. That is a bad choice unless you really like bondage and want to be put in that really cool looking detention chair that they put you in. It's like the timeout chair, but worse, because your arms are strapped behind you, and if you're spitting, don't spit. That's another charge. And they also get to put a spit mask on you, which looks terrible. I don't know. I have issues with like stuff touching my throat, so just looking at the spit mask makes me like claustrophobic. Because it's like mesh up top, but up to like your nose there's this plastic part, and a lot of people are like, I can't breathe. And I'm like, yeah, you can breathe. You know, as cops keep saying, if you can yell, you can breathe. Let's knock it off. Like, I don't feel like I can breathe. Well, that's a whole separate story. But you can breathe. But yeah, don't come in hot, because coming in hot will result in you being in the timeout chair. And in the Vegas jail, at least, the timeout chair people all have to sit in like the same area. And that would make me crazy if I had to deal with that, because like half the time someone's acting a crazy fool next to you and you're like, when can I get out? And they're like, oh, whenever. And they're like, this guy won't stop yelling. And it's like, yeah, you gotta ignore that. Again, I would not do well because I'm not great at ignoring things. Man, this thing got a lot of bitches. Those of you wondering, mostly my husband, yeah, I didn't put this in 4-wheel drive. We're just bumping along in 2-wheel drive just to see what's going on. Oh, we got a puddle coming up. Alright, so what else have I learned in jail, about jail, from watching the jail show, Las Vegas? Don't talk to other people all that much. If someone's annoying you, go flag down someone to get you to move. Because a lot of times they'll put you next to someone and they're just, I want to say deranged, but they're having a much harder time in life than you are. And it's like, I don't know if I want to deal with this. Ask to get moved. Because they put you out, you know, to wait, and you're not allowed to talk to the opposite gender or the opposite sex while you're hanging out. You're on different sides of the room. But that doesn't mean that like people of the same gender as you, same sex as you, aren't annoying too. So yeah, a lot of it just rests on don't act a fool. Otherwise you get placed in a segregated cell and then you get to spend more time there. I mean, if you want to spend more time there, that's fine. See, that did knock us sideways again. But yeah, most people don't. If you're homeless, I could understand it, but the rest of the world know. Anyway, one of the things I probably spent too much time on my days off while we're on jail shows, because my husband's like, why do you find these so fascinating? In the case of the jail shows, and 60 Days In particular, because you're thrusting people into an environment they're not comfortable with and probably would never be in, and you have to watch them adapt, and you get to learn a lot of exciting sociological lessons along the way, which is why the heck I'm still watching. So, the last season of Jail I watched before last week was season 5, or not Jail, 60 Days In. If you've never watched 60 Days In, that's the one I usually recommend you start with, just because it's got a lot of reality TV show type drama, a lot of stuff going on, a lot of characters, and it tends to follow the basic format of the series. Starting season 1 now, and it's very different. But what I ended up watching last week was season 6, and the life lesson I got from that, because I can't remember too much about all the other people. There's only 2 that stood out to me. One was the guy, this lovely white boy, who was a political science major. He knew he came from privilege, and he thought he had this theory that he's like, I'm a social chameleon, I'll be fine. And he goes in there, and of course he can't social chameleon himself to the gangsters that are hanging out in jail in Etowah County. So he's basically suffering from a mental breakdown, depression. He's like, I remember being bullied in school, I remember how this made me feel, and this would make me all go back there. And that's one thing I'm watching 60 Days, and if you've had childhood trauma, it will resurface that going into jail for a short stint. But yeah, I kind of saw through him. He lasted a lot longer than I thought he would, because there were a lot of other guys. There was an ex-Marine who tapped out very quickly. I think he was in the holding when they were booking you into jail. He was like, I can't deal with all this noise later. Because usually the military trained ones do pretty well. But in this case, the poli-sci major lasted a lot longer than I think most of us thought he would. Sort of the kicking point for him to go home was he bought for $70 off commissary, which is a crazy amount to pay for what is essentially just a radio, because they can't give you MP3s or access to any of that. So he bought a crappy jail radio, and he was wandering around with the music in his ears, to sort of keep him sane. And one of the other prisoners wanted to listen to whatever the local station was at night, and badgered him about it. And of course, him being it wasn't skinny or tiny, but him being so uncomfortable, he's like, yeah, here, have it. And they can't figure out a way to get it back. So that was kind of his last stroke. But the one I want to mention that is the one that gave me the life lesson that I needed to hear from jail was the woman that came in. She had celiac disease, and I personally don't think she disclosed this to the producers or anybody that was running the actual operation. Oh, road work ahead. Okay, see, I was sitting here blissfully thinking I could drive the whole way backwards to work, but maybe not. Maybe we do have to detour around this part of Woodward. Okay. Anyway, so she had celiac. Like I said, I don't think she disclosed at all to the producers, because I think if she had, they would have told her that she can't come. Because her logic, which admittedly was good logic. Why are we doing... Okay. Bridge out ahead. Which bridge? We're ahead. I think we're gonna have to go up into town, because I don't quite trust this bridge out ahead. Local traffic only. Okay. I guess we're not gonna drive the whole way down. We're gonna drive back around Myers. Anyway, I was trying to describe Charisse. So Charisse has celiac, and she decides to go out on this experiment. And her logic for doing this experiment without telling anyone is that due to the Americans for Disabilities Act, they should all be getting some form of fruits and vegetables every day. So she thinks she'll be fine. Unfortunately, she's not fine, because like I could tell her what the law says and what actually happens are generally two different things in life. So she expects this thing to happen, and at one point she actually talks to DO about it, because it's a couple days in, maybe even 24 hours in, because you're starving. And the detention officer's like, well, do you have any paperwork? Medical, I know from anything that says you're actually celiac and not just, whistling Dixie. And she's like, no, like a normal person that would just be picked up. They probably wouldn't carry any sort of paperwork declaring that they have an allergy. I don't know. I don't have any of those severe allergies. And so the deal is just kind of like, what are you going to do about it? Can't really do anything for you if you don't have any medical paperwork. And this brings me to like why I'm pretty sure she didn't tell the producers, because I'm fairly certain if someone with a severe peanut allergy had told the producers they had that, they'd disqualify them, just because there's so many prisoners who buy peanut butter off commissary. You're probably more likely than not going to have a peanut butter situation in your cell. If you had told me you were celiac, I'd be like, yeah, I don't want you to starve to death and possibly die just for doing this fun little experiment we're doing. But she doesn't. She doesn't disclose. And here's where the life lesson comes in. So she spends the entire time whining about not being able to eat, which, again, is fair because she's like, well, no one understands this. No one understands this disease. I've been dealing with this all my life. And on the one hand, I get you. And the other participants did try to like help her at one point. They like, gave them oranges finally at one meal. The state relented and were like, oh, maybe we'll find a fresh fruit. And so at one point, the other participants like go around and like gather up everybody's oranges that are willing to give them away and give them to her so that she can, you know, eat the oranges and not die. But aside from that, like, she spends a lot more time just complaining about it, and one of the other participants finally snaps at her and is just kind of like, it's jail. You kind of knew that going in. That you weren't going to get the food you wanted or the food you like. And she's like, it's not like what I want or what I like. It's what I need to not die. And so here's the life lesson. Simply put, stop whining about circumstances you can't change. Which covers a lot of ground these days for me. It's like, I can't change that, I can't fix that, I can only be responsible for what I can be responsible for, and I only have control over what I have control over. Yay. So, yeah, stop whining, stop being the complainer. There's some other reality TV show or a short I watched where they were talking about that. Oh, I think it was the Craig guy that does all the Tesco shorts on YouTube. He's hilarious. But yeah, he was talking about that, like, don't get stuck on break with the complainer. And I'm like, that's probably me. Because I'm turning into an old, bitter person. Oh, you are going to turn right. Okay, cool. Feel free to, like, get in the lane when the lane appears. There you are. It's alright. At least they get in the lane. My favorite's the people that put on the blinker and then are like, what? I have to get in that lane? Yes, get in that lane. Please get in that lane. Oh, yeah. Anyway, tomorrow will be fun because most of campus has its power off, except for us, but we're not open to the public, and they haven't listed us in the public places that have power, but I've asked, and they're like, yeah, we're kind of going to be the sanctuary for so many other departments. Oh, maybe we do have to loop around this again. You guys mess with the road again, which is fine. I just wonder how many times we're going to mess with it to add 2 new buildings to our campus. Although I'm guessing because of where this is at the museum, screwing everything up. And then we also have the chemical bank redevelopment. I have been heard it's going to be a Chipotle. I do not understand why Chipotle would want to come to our tiny little town. We're barely bougie enough to keep the Panera bread going. I don't see a lot of Chipotle need because we have Taco Bell and Qdoba and some other fancier, more independent places. But that's that. Thanks for riding with me to work on the slightly longer jaunt.